Hello and welcome to H916, and we're going to mention cause and effect now. It has also already caused a sort of stir up. I was just listening to a discussion that Ian McGilchrist had on the internet, on YouTube. He was interviewed by a fellow called Mark
something.
Yeah, Mark Manson, you could say. I'm going to check it out and give the information in the subtitles. And they were discussing this. If you go into the world, is it the world coming first, or is it imagination coming first? And that problem actually has to do with cause and effect. And it seems that the fellows haven't done their job properly looking into cause and effect. That was largely questioned in quantum mechanics for the first time. And it is cause and effect comes after the presencing. It comes after something has happened. As in the example of the tennis play of Roger Federer, he creates the situation and the audience subjectively, so to speak, or intentionally creates a cause and effect. But that's an arbitrary take on reality. Cause and effect is something we ascribe reality. It's not to be found directly within reality. It comes after the effect. And this, of course, causes a lot of problem. This is one of the legs why we have this problem with representational theory, because we think the world comes first and then come we. That is not true to the case. When Susie Froebel explains this, it becomes clearer. It is an interactive process that both coming from subject and object. So we have a preconception that is complete, almost like a whole world, and the world has its world, and is in this interconnectiveness that reality takes place. For without a complete model, there is nothing to read off, so to speak. So fractality solves the problem. How is something read off reality? I don't know what models has been going on before, but could be one of the reasons that Aristotle stranded in his problems with potentiality. Never solved. Well, why not Plato and his ideas of ideas? While starting with the outside, you end up in a problematic situation, and it could be that one solution is the world of ideas. A better solution is to start where it actually happens, and that is with the construction of cause and effect. This is this first and after effect that is so pervasive, and once established, it is rather hard to get around. It becomes established, and once that is foundation, everything else is built upon it. The external world, the idea that the subject is just a blank that sort of sucks up reality, or why not in the trope of the camera, we are sort of a film paper with a silver oxide on the surface, like a tan, that helps to develop the reality on its paper. And this is being seen by whom, I don't know, the homunculus. That, of course, causes other problems, unsolved until quantum mechanics. It's a coercive process, and it doesn't make any sense to talk about cause, neither effect. It doesn't make any sense to speak about first or after. In some aspect, it doesn't even make sense to talk about inside and outside. Fractality is much more complicated and necessary so for there to be a reality. Actually, in the idea of Mark Manson, whatever his name was, there wouldn't be a possibility for a reality to spring into place. Just wouldn't happen. Just let me fill up some of this lovely Poincaré drink. It's tea. Oh. What we need to do is wholeheartedly, with our own whole organism, enter into the exogenous, and not with the passivity of the gestalt of either the theoreme or the idea of a stand-byer. And the idea of the stand-byer is the idea of sitting in a theater where the world makes itself. And for a world to make itself, it will automatically construct cause and effect, because that replaces that vividness that was before. This is the same effect that we had in pre-antiquity or antiquity, when we entered passivity with a subject and an object. It is very equal to the idea of somebody sitting in theater just looking at the play, not participating, and nothing in the play is dependent on the observer. It's easier in this image, also common for Rodolphe Gachet, to understand why cause and effect is absolutely needed. It is the replacement to sort of being the ersatz from the vividness that time usually gives or gave, and it sort of molds the past, and it also preforms the future. In future, beads glued together with cause, glued to effect, glued to another cause, glued to another effect. So it's like spreading out like this in all directions, making a lock in this. And there you have some sort of preamble to determinism that came much later. But it's not hard to understand that it is basically the same. It is the same multifaceted gestalt that is in place. This is coming from perception. You can actually see the cause and effect sitting in the theater. So it's not something that is only added by the subject, it's also added by the object side. And this, of course, makes it an obfuscation in knowledge. And don't start to think my knowledge, because that obfuscates the thing and even more. This is the reason Heidegger instigated Dasein, is to get rid of this eternal problem, because once you start saying it gets established somewhere, you start to say it gets established in the subject, and then you don't get out of the problem. Dasein is much better. Of course, it's hard to understand, and that goes for everyone, and that's one of the great mysteries of quantum mechanics. How can the confusion exist both in the particle side and in the observer side? But that's how it is, oddly enough. But it could help to think that the discoveries in quantum mechanics led to changes in logic as well. All of a sudden, the law of excluded middle was changed, and that came from quantum mechanics. If it were everything is stemming, or everything of knowledge is situated within the subject only and not exterior to the subject, how could logic be changed by quantum mechanics? It could not. I think that is one of the riddles that might awaken you to the fact that something odd is going on. I always compare that to the cat in the Matrix series. Once you see the cat, there's something odd going on with the Matrix. Well, you see the cat 2 times, it is. You get this Deja Vu effect. This is the Deja Vu effect of the real world. It tells you maybe knowledge is not sort of calibrated in the right way. And the calibration problem is not only on the part of the subject. It is in the Dasein. Dasein is not equal to subject. Neither is it equal to the object. It is beyond this, or it's rather before. It's an ontological thing. This is the why of ontology rather than the what. You see here how gallantly Heidegger, by his neologism, avoids the pitfalls of earlier thinking. It's rather brilliant. Good to have Heidegger in your back once you enter these problems. Have the terms firmly established so as they can help us enter reality in a better way. Once cause and effect is sort of established, it solidifies, and you get this personal sense that everything is somehow always consistent, coherent, and corresponding in the external world and in your inner world at the same time. Now we enter the zone of non-paradoxality. Nothing is a paradox anymore. And this is the construct of a short-sighted Kafkaesque party. It has all those self-defeating, disillusioned emotions that comes up with it. This sense of loss, this sense of lack, this sense of the world not having substance or sustenance for us. And this was actually the case with Kafka himself. And this was the sort of perception behind the book, The Process, where everyone seemed to be a victim of the circumstances, a cause and effect that does itself, and where all the explanations fit the absurdity of the cause and effect that the play is. It's an exhilarating, but also it gives you sort of a short-sightedness once you're in it. I always get the feeling while reading the Process like looking down a steep mountain. It's this gnawing feeling in your stomach, hissing feeling. You can compare this bureaucratic society, something I didn't experience myself once being in Franz Kafka Airport, but there it's named after him. And they even made a sort of commercial at the Franz Kafka Airport should be like The Process, that you never got to your gate, or the gate you were supposed to go to didn't exist. But actually, it's a very good commercial. I think it's funny, and maybe some of the marketers thought this is going to be deterrent going to Prague and Franz Kafka Airport. But it wasn't really. It was quite fun. But it also depicts the feeling that you have lost your role in your own reality. And that is like suffering from some sort of hunger. And you cannot fill it up, whatever you try to fill it up with. Doesn't matter if it's money or food or travels or enjoyment, drugs, you name it. It will not fill the leak, fill this in interior chiasma which this creates. And of course this is the impetus of all of Western philosophy somehow. This is why we're seeking to establish a center, a presence, from where everything should have its starting point. And this is also the reason for marginalizing things, which puts in process another sort of almost similar development by itself. And things get out of hand more and more and more. One good way of sort of making cause and effect more moldable, try to reverse it. Try to think it's going in the other way and see what happens to reality. Does it get destroyed somehow? Another helping tool could be that actually in Newtonian physics time can go backwards in a most peculiar way. So actually cause and effect is to a certain extent reversible even in the old model, but even more so can be in quantum mechanics. I would say quantum mechanics is the absolute deconstruction of cause and effect, to show the factors that lies behind cause and effects are much more complicated, much more intricate, and our common notion is just a crude summary of what it could be, and it usually misses the target because it's preemptively divided in a way that doesn't suit our purposes. Well, loads of times it doesn't suit our purposes. It hides the true nature of reality, and it makes us more isolated to the external. And there is also this trait of passivity. Passivity is so much prevalent in the novel of the process that you need to take a break sometimes. You just get exhausted of the poor protagonist having no power whatsoever. A most paranoid vision of reality, and I think it's rather apt for the current one. But it is still not beyond questioning. Cause and effect has actually been put on the same trial that is in the process. And it started actually with Poincaré and Ernst Mach already in the beginning of the second last century. But it got finally shown to be non-working or not clearly thought through by Julian Barber. And this is of course the reason why he calls his most famous book The End of Time. It's not the end of time, but it's the end of classical physical time, or the end of cause and effect in the modern day common sense jargon. And this is the reason why we get stuck in also this idea of the world being completely exterior to us. There is like a huge distance between us and the exterior world, and all we do is register what's happened out there. And of course that is the process. This is the process in a nutshell. We no longer participate, and that affects what we see. That is actually a stance. This is a way of being that we somehow choose, and it affects everything. It changes the world. It's an attitude towards the world where we care less. Why do we care less? Well, it's already distant. We are not in the world. We're not in the words. We do not inhabit them. We do not dwell within them. This is the reason why intellectuality has been thrown out of the window, because an intellectuality without a body and a soul is no intellectuality. It's just the surface. We have in the end just polished platitudes to sort of linger onto. Just like the poor protagonist, you can see how he develops some sort of hope in this completely hopeless process. And for every time he gets this hope, he gets some extra energy within the system, and then it happens again. He gets pushed into a wall and is not getting anywhere. From one department of this huge bureaucracy to another one. And he's the one who's guilty or whatever that was. It's not really clear. And if we probably feel guilty as well. We should have done more to enter into the presence. If I just put some more effort to the whole thing, I will enter to the presence. And maybe this is the carrot that modern education has, that if you really put your effort, you will reach absolute presence and this liberation out of the bureaucracy of coherence, correspondence, and consistency. But there is no way out. It is a false hope, and this false hope is the reason why we carry on being inside the system. We get so stuck, we will not be able to take in quantum mechanics, which is it's sort of a banner that says to us there is liberation round the corner. We can understand the world and ourselves. We can do both things at the same time, and the one thing is not dependent on the other one in the way that there is a cause and effect, usually called derived or something similar. This very derivation that the world either comes from the subject side as idealism, or that the world comes from the outside, usually called empiricism, they are both two ways inside the novel of the process, and they both leads to the same bureaucratic shutdown. Both there is a mustached man who says you are guilty. There's no escape. Fill in the form like 10 times more. In the end, there is no escape. And this is why the message from quantum mechanics is so absolutely important. We need a real slap on the cheek to wake us up to our own opportunities of regaining paradise lost, to paraphrase Milton. We can get back to paradise. And we will find paradise is just where we're sitting. It is here. How odd, one would think. Why isn't it out there, somewhere else? Maybe in this transcendental sphere of Plato, or in the imagined extra worlds of Hugh Everett, or whatever that could be. No, it's here, in our very presence, thrown into the world. Here is the whole gratitude of everything. And for most people, this place is something we already discarded. We have become habituated, neglecting our own instantiation in the world, because we think that is not a place for pleasure. That is not a place for knowledge. It should be somewhere else. And therefore, of course, we neglect the finest thing. We sort of take our vision away from the glory of the world and direct it elsewhere. And that blinds our eyes. And on the inside, we keep our reality like a beetle box. But the bad thing is we don't even know what is in our own beetle box, because we lack the exogenous to tell us what it is. We need the exogenous as well. We cannot be locked down, as Wittgenstein so gallantly proved in the private language example, the impossibility of a private language, even for the one who is in possession of the Beetle box, even for him to understand what he has in his box doesn't work. And of course, once more, that is rather Kafkaesque. It means that in the regular Gestalt there is no knowledge possible. There is only determinism, and it has been going on since the dice was thrown in Big Bang or whatever. Since that, everything falls in place, and it's just cause and effect since that. And we get all this already always established order that seems to lock everything down, and it sucks our energy and makes all doing rather cumbersome, because we have to go all through this business of thinking of an external world and then saying that we have an epistemology, the knowledge of the external world, and then we have all these information bits and we need to process them, we need to mark them, put them in another sequence, and from that sequence we have the planning. That planning is bound to be horrible, because we need to invent the future. It is an act of creativity. And then there I think the word projection is the absolutely best, coming from Bergson. You yourself project the future. You make it up, and thereby it becomes real. But if you're passively waiting for the future or the past, it will never come. You have already put a weird or artificial attitude to reality, that one of the theater, and that obfuscates perception. That puts perception down. I said it before, but do remember there are 3 times as much neurons going out than there are coming back. Obviously, if you don't have a complete preconceived model of the world, you won't receive anything back either. It's an wholly active process. And if you don't let it be an active process, you will end up in this Kafkaesque syndrome. You block out reality. Reality is rather interesting. I just checked on the internet earlier on when I wrote this. There are actually languages that have at least 100 more words for colors than we do. Much more shades. And those shades are not possible for us, because we block out things randomly, and we block out reality, and in our zest, our zealous mission to nowhere, we get even more compelled to block everything out, searching for something where we don't even know where it is. Somewhere, a territory, looking a little bit somewhere over the rainbow, I was thinking, like in the movie with what's her name? Somewhere over the rainbow, where they never get to the rainbow, because once you get closer to the rainbow, it moves away. You never, ever can come to the rainbow, and you can never reach full presence within this gestalt. Just won't happen. Yes, the lack is there, the frustration is there, so there you have the impetus, but you are going the wrong way. And we do not have to repeat the mistakes of the predecessors. We are finally free to look into this with carefulness and intellect, and do a honest, real deconstruction of reality itself, and see that it has much more to offer once you enter into it. I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon from this rather nice place. You can take maybe a little panoramic see-through here. You can see that spring actually today is coming on with speed.
Okay, thank you.
And you, cheers.